For many of us, we were never taught how to learn. We were left to figure it out ourselves. We were taught physics, we were taught history, we were taught English, but we were never taught how to learn. So this video aims to teach you how to learn. The ability to learn is a skill. Sometimes we say that, oh, this person is doing so well. And we may say that, oh, he's so clever, he's talented. Well, it's true, some people are gifted, but all of us can learn. And all of us should learn. That should be our choice. Hope in this video you will learn how to learn and it will help you in all subjects, not just physics. Let me now go through the phases of learning. There are basically 5 phases. Right? The first phase is acquire surface learning. Second phase is consolidate the surface learning. Third phase is acquire deep learning, followed by consolidate deep learning, and lastly, transfer of learning. I will explain this in detail later. Right, it is important to be aware how you learn, as you may need to make changes to the way you learn. You need to use the right strategies at the right time, else it may be frustrating and stressful when you did not see the results you hope for. To meet the demands of A-level physics exam, you need to be able to consolidate deep learning. Many times, we advise the student to change the way they learn. They should not be still using O-level strategies, rote learning, without deeply understanding the topics. Because when they do that, they cannot apply the physics concept in a different context. And most of the time, they will struggle with A-level physics. I can say that it is similar for all subjects. At A-level, it is really about deep learning so that you can apply this learning. Now, let's look at how our memory works. Basically, it is divided into acquire and consolidate. In the acquire phase, we take information into the short-term memory, right? So you may study last minute, memorize the definition. You find that after exam, you forgot how to define forces, for example. Right, so it means that you have just acquired surface learning and it is just in your short-term memory. Right, what we need to do is on top of acquire, we need to consolidate. Consolidate means you move this information from the short-term memory into the long-term memory. Right, so surface learning is just accepting information and idea passively. You memorize the facts routinely without deeply trying to understand. You learn ideas without relating to them. You study without much reflecting on the purpose or the strategy. So for example, whatever I'm telling you now, if you are just listening without taking notes, without relating to your own experience, it is a surface learning. Right? Deep learning, on the other hand, relate ideas to previous knowledge and experience. So when I was talking about memorizing definition and then forgetting it the next day, if you can relate to it, you know that yes, that is true, that is just acquire, that's just short-term memory, right? And that is a first step to deep learning, right? If you can, you will extend the ideas, give your own examples, and look for patterns and underlying principles in the things you learn. You check for evidence and relate to conclusion. Right? You become very active in the course content. Okay, so in this table, you can see the 4 phases. You have acquire surface learning, which is just receiving information in pieces. This is still important. We need to go through this phase. And what are some strategies that you need to take while going through this phase? Right? One is note taking. As a lecture is going on, as you're watching e-videos, do you take notes? Do you pause the video and say, hey, yes, this is something important, and you take down? Do you underline? Do you highlight the important points? More importantly, do you summarize, make your own notes instead of just using the physics notes, underlying it, highlighting it? Because when you summarize it, you have some kind of processes, right? You process the information and it will be more helpful. Right, let's move on to consolidate surface learning. As you remember, consolidation is moving from short-term to long-term memory. So some strategies will include deliberate practice, right? So as you practice questions, you do so to receive feedback. So it could be a checkpoint, concept check in our notes. As you look through the concept check, do you ask yourself whether you have understood? Okay, you review the notes. As you review the notes, you ask yourself how much you have learned. Do you meet the learning outcome? Practice testing. So you test yourself maybe on an online assignment, tutorial. Test yourself if you really have understood and grasped the concept. Okay, something that is quite interesting is space practice. Okay, which means you do not just practice throughout. Okay, for a long duration, you may practice physics for a while and then you do another subject or another topic and then come back again. As you space out, a different part of your brain will be engaged. As a result, the information can be transferred to your long-term memory. Let's talk about acquire deep learning. Right? Remember, acquire is still short-term memory, but now it involves deep learning. So deep learning, basically, one important part is linking knowledge and see the relation, right? So therefore, the strategies will be elaboration and organization. So for example, you do a table to compare and contrast, right? For example, the difference between speed and velocity, you draw a table listing the commonalities and the differences. And look for some patterns. Okay, why is it a scalar? Why is it a vector? Why is the unit meter per second, etc. Right, and very powerful tool is also concept mapping. As you do your own summary in the form of concept map or mind map, it helps you to see the relationship. Okay, and the last point, self-regulation of strategies. So after employing the different learning strategies, you ask yourself and you check yourself, is this strategy useful? Is it powerful for me? And if not, how should I regulate it? If it is, how do I continue extending it to other subjects or other topics? Okay, last phase that we'll talk about is consolidate deep learning. So this is about after seeing relationship, you make this idea your own and you are strategic about how to learn. So for example, adaptive help seeking. Right, so when you encounter some problems that you do not know how to do, what do you do? Do you ask your friend, show me your solution? Or do you ask for hints from your friends, from a teacher? Can you give me some hint how to solve this? So with the hint, it should push you on and help you think deeper, right? If you do this, it helps you make ideas your own. And another very powerful strategy is peer tutoring. Whether you are a tutor or tutee, right? As you learn from one another, as you teach, you will always have to verbalize it in your own words. You have to ask questions in your own words. You have to teach ideas in your own words. In such cases, you make ideas your own. So I'll encourage you to form small study groups and begin peer tutoring process. Right? So as I mentioned, the other processes, evaluation, reflection, self-verbalizing, self-questioning, all these are important and they are actually used in peer tutoring, right? And in class discussion, please participate actively instead of passively listen, waiting for someone to provide the answer. So that is not very helpful and effective. Now, what are your learning strategies? For many of you, you will pay attention during lessons, you highlight key points, you copy down. But which phase is this? Is it deep learning? Is it consolidation? No, it's very passive. It is just acquired surface learning. That means you are only putting this information in your short-term memory. So it may last a day or two, but the following week you will forget. Right? Therefore, really have to think of how to move this surface learning into consolidation. What are your learning strategies? Do you summarize and make your own notes? And try your best to memorize the definition and formula. Okay. So, in this case, you have acquire and consolidate surface learning. When you memorize definition or formula, you may use some strategies like mnemonics, right? Or thinking of how to memorize it in the most efficient way. When you summarize and make your own notes, you are trying to consolidate the learning. And if you teach these concepts to your friend, you would have moved on to consolidate deep learning. Do you practice many questions? That is important because as you practice questions, you may begin to see patterns. You may be able to understand how to solve certain questions, right? And then it can move this information into your long-term memory. So this is a consolidated surface learning. It is good. In a studies 2014, there are physics students who participated in these studies, right? And it is found that after the students solve over 2,000 problems, they still cannot solve other physics questions. What is the problem? Most probably, these students are at a surface learning phase. And if you do not follow this advice to adopt other strategies, you may end up like them. So do you connect the various concepts across the topics and make your own notes? If you're able to do some connections, see relations, then it is deep learning. Okay? When you are stuck at a question, do you ask your friends or teachers for hints? If you do that, you can move on to consolidation of deep learning. Ask for hints and continue to think on your own on how to solve. Right, the list that we have gone through is not exhaustive. It is in your notes, the various strategies. But do you have the required variety of learning strategies? Learn when to apply which strategies. I encourage you to look through the notes, the list of strategies, and try to adopt them in your various subjects of learning. When you become a master of learner, you will definitely do well in A level. Right? So do not stay in a comfort zone of applying the same strategies as you have done in O level, but push yourself to learn these new strategies and become a learner. This will be the end of the video. All the best in your journey of learning.